What is going on, guys? It's your boy Luke here for our Sunday Showdown picks for the Tournament of Champions. We're going to cover weather, the player pool, not ownership this time. Wasn't able to run my spreadsheets, but we're going to hop through the player pool because it is a Showdown slate for Sunday and we have placement points in the fold. My ownership algorithm doesn't necessarily work. It's set up for 4-round events or for single-round Showdown slates. Whenever we get the position points in play, kind of throws my algorithm a little bit off. So if you're looking for ownership numbers, of course, a lot of the other DFS sites out there, you know the names of those. Go ahead and check them out. They are going to have those numbers for you. In terms of the weather for today, we're looking at even more benign conditions than what we've seen over the entire week. First and foremost, in the morning, looking at 5 to 6 mile an hour winds, which is essentially nothing. The players are hardly going to have to account for that. By midday at 11 a.m., this will be towards the end of the round. Most of the guys that teed off in the morning will have already finished up their rounds. You can see 7 to 8 miles an hour, only a breath of wind more. So still perfect scoring conditions. And this is going to be right around when we see the leaders start to tee off. So you can see still great conditions for those leaders. And towards the end of the day, 2 p.m., they should be wrapping up the golf tournament at the most, I'd say 3 or 4 p.m. over there in Hawaii, and you can see conditions a little bit more tough, 8 to 12 miles an hour. They are going to have to start taking that into consideration, clubbing up or down, that kind of thing. But this is something they've been used to this week. We saw 10 to 15 mile an hour winds on Thursday or Friday, and yesterday afternoon, actually up to 15 to 20 miles an hour. Yet we still saw the best conditions for scoring of the entire week. A lot of that is coming down to the extra rollout these players are getting with these dried out fairways. And even though the greens are getting a little bit more bouncy, much more firm as they've started to get a little bit drier throughout the week, it's still playing extremely easy. So I don't expect that to change. And we can check if it goes to a playoff tonight, you can see that the winds are actually going to go down to 8 to 9 miles an hour. So if they end up playing into the night before dusk, not going to be a problem. Let's move over to the player pool for today. And I'm going to go ahead and sort this by position. So this is why I like going over to the DK, because if you guys are new to Showdown on Sundays, placement points become a huge part of the fold. So you're talking about 15 points to first. It's half the normal placement points that you'd get for a 4-round event. Second place is getting 10 points, so on and so forth. Down to last place this week, down at number 40, that is still getting a few placement points. The scoring system is still set up for a full field event where you're dealing with a 70-player cut, so 65 in ties, right around 70 players making the cut. It's still set up for that, right? So some of these guys down here at number 40, as compared to some of these guys up here at number 15 to 20, the placement point difference is only about 1.5 points, maybe up to 3 points if you're talking about a little bit of a wider range with some of these guys up here in the top 10. That is less than 1 birdie. What that means is that for any of these guys that are essentially out of maybe that top 5, maybe the top 8 is where I'd take that cutoff line, your placement position is almost completely irrelevant, right? If you're going from something like a 14th to a 15th, you get that 1 extra birdie and end up at that same finishing position at the end of the day. Or even, actually, to make this a better example, if you went from like 13th to 14th place, right? And you stayed 1 shot back of these guys at 15 under par, but you made 1 more birdie for the day, even though you'd be behind on the scorecard, you would have beaten them in fantasy points. That's the kind of impact that this has. A lot of people are I don't want to say, I don't know the right word for it, but they're looking too much into those placement points. Up top, though, when you have guys that are 5, 6 shots ahead of the field, you want to go ahead and take those people, though, right? Because you're getting 15 to 10 points up here. That's a 3 to 4 birdie difference. That is going to make at least a little bit more of I'm going to take it a little bit more seriously, right? Than some of these guys are in around 15th to 10th place. You're talking about very small differentials in terms of their placement points. I do think Jon Rahm and Cam Smith are essentially free squares today as a result. They're going to be in every single lineup that I'm running. And because I have a lot of lineups that I'm sweating in terms of some of the 4-round slate that I have, I'm going to have a really hard time trying to fade Daniel Berger as well. Berger to this point of the week is number 2 in the field in shots gained tee to green. And he's losing nearly 2 strokes putting. That's not something that we typically see from Daniel Berger, particularly on Bermuda grass, where he is a top 10 putter in the world. So I do expect to see some positive regression for a Daniel Berger here. And you can see if we try to plug in these 3 studs up top, we're already looking at $6,700 remaining left per player. So already pretty hampered when it comes to our salary cap there. So we're going to go ahead and go player by player now. I just wanted to give you guys an idea of some of my core plays. Those 3 are going to be in every lineup that I have. A lot of that comes down to the lineups that I'm sweating for the 4-round event, but all of them in great positions, particularly John Rahm and Cam Smith, who are going to be just way, way ahead of the field come this afternoon. Let's talk about some of these mid-tier plays, though. Patrick Cantley has been just about as average can be to this point of the season. Not the season, of the event. He's gained a little bit off the tee, right around his stroke off the tee. He's gained a couple strokes on approach. He's gained a couple strokes on the greens and right around neutral around the green. He's not really differentiating himself in any category, but that's something that we're used to seeing from Patrick Cantley. He's an extremely balanced player. He's only $9,000. He's been right around that price the entire week, which doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, we've seen other people priced up, most notably Cam Smith went from right around $8,000 to nearly $10,000. Patrick Cantley has actually seen a price decrease over the week, and he's still on the top 5. Again, the algorithm for Draftkings Showdown, a little bit off. It seems like it's just a little bit random at times. So if you wanted to go to Patrick Cantley rather than a Daniel Berger, I couldn't fault you. But when I see those regression numbers when it comes to Daniel Berger, where he's losing strokes putting when he's typically one of the best players on tour, that's why I'm siding with the Daniel Berger. So I couldn't fault you for going either way. But I think taking 3 of these 4 guys up top and having these 2 as locks is definitely what you need to be doing today. When you're dealing with these placement points, you already have 2 guys that made it to 26 under par after 3 days. There's no questioning their form. They clearly have control of their entire game. I don't think you need to overthink those 2 guys. Let's talk about a few people you could use for leverage. Matt Jones is not going to be a source of leverage at $6,300. He is going to be mega chalk today. So if you're trying to fit in 3 of these studs up top, and you want to try to differentiate yourself in one of these large field tournaments, just by avoiding Matt Jones, probably going to have a good chance at doing so. I'd say at least half of the field is going to take Matt Jones. He's probably looking at right around 55% expected ownership on today's slate. If you're playing in cash, I don't think you need to go ahead and fade it. I don't think that's necessary. He's definitely at a good spot of the leaderboard. He's at a good price tag. He's obviously in good form if he's made it to 20 under par. But for some of these large field tournaments where ownership is essentially all we're looking at with such a volatile sport, makes a lot of sense to fade. So depends on the kind of contest that you're in. Sungjae Im, a little bit more intriguing. So he's in that $8,400 range. He's towards the top of the leaderboard, and I expect him to be almost completely overlooked. I'm expecting him to be owned in the teens in terms of ownership, whether that's between 11 or 12, 11 to 17% or something like that. That's the kind of range I expect him to come in at. And compared to these other guys up top, that could be a third or even a fourth of the ownership. I mean, John Rahm, Cam Smith, probably going to touch 80% ownership today, but that's well warranted, right? Sungjae Im, though, more than capable of going out there and shooting a really low round. We saw that on Friday, saw that yesterday as well. Not really going to be a priority for me, right? He would definitely make your lineup unique. If you're going from, let's say Daniel Berger or Patrick Cantley to a Sungjae Im, not only are you going to get quite a bit of salary flexibility, which I'm not necessarily sure you need for this slate. Let's go ahead and get that out there. The pricing is extremely soft. It would make you extremely unique, though. So again, depends on what kind of contest you're in, but all the metrics look good for Sungjae Im, much like a Patrick Cantley, gaining across the board. And most importantly, gaining on Bermuda grass, something that we hadn't seen from Sungjae Im for over 6 events coming in. Historically, he's one of the best Bermuda grass putters in the world. So that's actually why I was a little bit hesitant to play him for my 4-round stuff. But has clearly looked good these first 3 days. He's been one of the best putters in the field. So I'm willing to essentially forgive and forget from what we saw from Sungjae Im those last 2 months of 2021. A few guys. Now we're starting to get to the range here. After we get past 20 under, I'd say is where we really need to just be looking at birdie makers, right? Like I said before, unless you're going out there and shooting 8, 9 under par today, vaulting yourself from maybe like a 10th to a 2nd or a 3rd on the leaderboard, it's not going to make a massive difference with your placement points. Where you're really going to separate yourself from the field is with that birdie production. So of course, it would be great for anyone in this range to go absolutely nuclear. But again, it's not the placement points we're looking for. If they just make 10 birdies today, but also bogey 5 or 6 holes, that's going to be all right. First and foremost, Justin Thomas went absolutely nuclear yesterday. I did not expect that, right? He was not a priority for me yesterday. A lot of the putting metrics on Thursday and Friday were really worrying me, but made everything yesterday. And while I love to see that, while that's, great, I'm a huge Justin Thomas fan myself. He's one of my top 3 favorite players in the world. The issue is we cannot expect that to happen again. If you take a look at the long-term pedigree with this guy has not been a good putter. And that's been the case for almost 3 years now. So as much as I want him to go out and play well once again tomorrow, He could very well go out and shoot 7 or 8 under today. He's not going to get to 10 or 13 under again. That's just not sustainable for Justin Thomas. As good of a ball striker as he is, you have to be a lights out putter to put up that kind of score. Maybe he goes ahead and proves me wrong once again. I'd be perfectly okay with that. Again, he's one of my favorite players in the world. It's not like he's cheap. It's also not like he's going to be completely underowned. So as of right now, I'm taking a look across the industry. He's projected for over 20% ownership, which is certainly much less than some of these guys up top. At least a third less than somebody like down here that we have with Justin Thomas, right? Price tag is in that same type of range. He's actually more expensive than a Cam Smith. I don't think you need to overthink it though, right? You don't need to be cute. I think that's the best way to explain this. Don't go out there and try to be cute. Just execute based on what you know. And at his price tag, I don't think he needs to be a priority today. So that's what I'll have to say about it. If you really want to go ahead and try to, kind of scoreboard watch and try and take him after that round, I understand it. I just don't advise it. Hideki Matsuyama, he didn't have the best day yesterday. So he started off really hot, shot 4 under, then he shot 9 under on Friday. Yesterday, still a respectable round, but lost ground on the leaderboard. That's just the kind of day that it was. In terms of his putting, much like a Justin Thomas, doesn't really give us what we're looking for. So just other guys in this range, I'd rather take a shot on with higher upside in terms of their putting. First and foremost, Mark Leishman makes a ton of sense. Unlike a Justin Thomas and a Hideki Matsuyama, he's got the putter absolutely rolling. And while he isn't the best putter on Bermuda grass for his career, in 2021, he gained over 0.4 shots gained per round on Bermuda. So clearly figured something out. And towards the end of the year, had 2 performances of over 7 strokes gained putting on Bermuda in just the last 2 months of the season. So this is somebody who clearly figured out the surface, is putting extremely well on it. He's also played some events, especially towards the end of 2021, where we didn't have the shots gained metrics, and he was absolutely filling it up on the greens as well. So could be even better than what the metrics are bearing out. Really like him there at $7,600. He's been extremely good since Thursday. On Thursday, definitely had his fair share of struggles, to say the least, but has seemed to figure it out. Bryson D Shimbo, I thought he was going to go out there and be the Justin Thomas yesterday. Absolutely figured out, but he can't figure out the putter. He's striking it much, much better than what we've seen in the past. If he was putting to his normal baseline right now, he'd be winning this golf tournament. He'd be at 29, 30 under par. That's how good this guy's playing. He hit 4 drives over 400 yards yesterday. No one else in the field's hit a drive 400 yards. He did 4 in one day. So, I'm kind of a Bryson fanboy, if you guys can't tell. But at the same time, the guy has so much volatility when it comes to DFS that you could argue playing him at any golf course, any day, any type of format for fantasy, and I would not argue it. So he's not going to be a priority for me. Again, he's down here at number 15. It really is coming down to the birdie production. But if we're going to be taking shots down low, we want this to be our value plays, right? We want it to be our value play that goes out there, makes 7 or 8 birdies today. Taking a Bryson DeChambeau takes us away from a Cam Smith, a Daniel Berger, or a John Rahm, which we can't really afford to do in any Sunday Showdown type of format. So as much as I like a Bryson DeChambeau, typically he'd be much more of a GPP play than anything. I mean, you'd be taking a pure punt play, hoping he goes out and has that Justin Thomas type of day, which if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be a Bryson DeChambeau. But again, I have my concerns there. Sam Burns did not have the day we were looking for. He is still yet to make a bogey, which is quite crazy, to be quite honest with you. I believe it's only him and Matt Jones that haven't made a bogey this week. And Sam Burns isn't known for getting up and down. So that's just telling you how good he is with his ball striking. He's been hitting almost every single green, every single fairway, just hasn't made his fair share of putts. Similar problem to a Bryson DeChambeau, though, a little bit more expensive than I'd like. If there's quite frankly anybody I'd like to take a little bit of a stab on that's a little bit more expensive than he should be, it'd be a Xander Schofley. So Xander Schofley, 2 years ago when he won the Sentry Tournament of Champions, he shot 11 under on Sunday. He came from way back to go and steal the tournament from Gary Woodland. We've seen that in years past as well. Even when he finished 3rd place and 5th place, shot over 8 under or better on the last day. So Xander Schofley, whatever it is, Sundays at the Sentry Tournament of Champions, maybe it's the pin placements, right? They try to keep them consistent from year to year. He absolutely loves the setup. So I am actually going to be taking some shots on Xander Schofley here at $8,800. Just very intriguing, especially the 4th round stats here at the Sentry Tournament of Champions. And he's in my main lineup. Like I said before, guys, I'm going to be as transparent as possible. He's in my main lineup that has a chance to take down the 100K. So I want to make sure that I'm sweating him in both types of builds there. So he will be in my 150 maxes for today, probably right around 30-40% exposure. If he goes out and has a massive day, that is going to be maybe 5 to 6x what the field gets to, which makes him an intriguing option. Somebody else that's going to be royally underowned is going to be a Colin Murakawa. Again, I'd much rather have JT there, though, right? JT's had a lot of success at this golf course. He made a ton of putts yesterday. Murakawa just can't make a putt for his life this week. He's missed 6 putts within 5 feet, which is embarrassing, to be quite honest with you. I think a lot of the viewers of this channel could probably do better than that. But been great from tee to green, right? Hitting almost every single fairway. He's been hitting almost every single green in regulation. Boy, if the guy could figure out how to putt, right? We have a comment down chat from Barry. Is liking Xander as a high upside pivot. Yeah, I agree, right? So if you're in a large field GPP, that's where I'm going to be dishing him out. If you're playing cash, again, we're looking for that top 10 to 15 percentile type of outcome. So for cash, wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, I like his chances for a large field GPP type of thing. Let's talk about a few other guys that I like for whether it's cash or GPPs. First and foremost, a Seamus Power. Seamus Power was great from tee to green yesterday, but much like a Colin Murakawa, couldn't make anything. So he had a bogey-free day. That's how on top of his ball striking he was. Just really needs to get the putter working like he was on Thursday and Friday. And the reason for a little bit of encouragement here is he looked great on Thursday and Friday. Was making everything. Was one of the leaders in shots gained putting. So I do expect a little bit of positive regression from a Seamus Power, and much like a Xander Schofley, also in my main GPP lineup that has a shot at the 100K. So a little bit of extra incentive for me to play. Go ahead and play him today. If you guys down low, I don't think you need to prioritize pretty much any of the studs down here, right? So Jordan Spieth, Brooks Koepka, Tony Finau, Victor Hovland. Hell, I'd probably even put Harris English into that boat. Actually, he's a little bit too cheap, right? So they've lowered his price significantly. So don't put him in that same type of boat. A lot of these other guys that are in that 8K range, they're starting to get way back on the board here. Not only are you talking about bad form here, you're also talking about just a bad position on the leaderboard, right? If they go and shoot 9, 10 under today, they might still not crack the top 10. That's the issue with some of these guys. Whereas, 13, 14, 15 under par, they go out and have a great day. They're finishing in that top 5. They're getting some of those placement points. So I see we have a comment asking about Harris English. So we'll talk about him, right? He's a little bit cheaper than I thought he was going to be. Obviously started the week at $7,800. Has kind of looked dog shit to this point, but you can't question his course fit. I mean, absolutely decimated this place last year. Has great long iron play, great Bermuda grass putting. Yesterday, actually hit the ball really well, just didn't make his fair share of putts. I believe he shot, was it 6 under yesterday, something like that? I mean, which isn't horrible by any means, but you're expecting a lot better from the defending champion and from a golf course that averaged 6 under par yesterday. I'm not so sure on it, right? He's a little bit further down the board. There's other cheaper options in that 6K range that I like just a little bit more. And let's go ahead and cover some of those options. First and foremost, Lucas Glover. Let me show you why Lucas Glover is important. I think this will make a lot more sense when I do this. Okay. Lucas Glover is the only way that you can essentially get access to multiple of these 9K options and still take some respectable cheap options, right? So if we don't take a Lucas Glover, if you want to try and build a lineup behind these top 3, what I call my shell for today, these are going to be my core plays right up there. You really start getting down to some of these bare bone options, right? You can go to a Matt Jones. The issue with Matt Jones is that he's a mega chalk, right? So when we put a Matt Jones in here on top of these 3 other really, really chalky options, now we're really being pinned into a corner. We're essentially on a 2 versus 2 with, I'd say, about half the field. You could see half the field go with these 4 players right here. I would not be surprised at the least 3 of them, right? At least 3 of these 4 guys are going to be in like half of every lineup. So just understand that. And when we get down to just $7,000 remaining per player, it's like, oh, Cam Davis is here. Click him in. Oh, $7,100. Okay, people are either going to hit a Stuart Sink. They might go down here and take a Siwoo Kim or a Joel Damon. The issue is this is extremely chalky. You're looking at 30% ownership on a Joel Damon, 40% on somebody like a Cam Davis. And we've already talked about how these guys up top probably going to be 80% owned, all of them. By taking somebody like a Lucas Glover, who's on paper an atrocious play, it completely takes us off of that chalky build. So we can still take 3 of these chalky players. And I know I mentioned this the other day. It's not always about the ownership percentages. a lot of times it's about figuring out the different construction. And this is a really good way to do this today. You don't have to use a Lucas Glover, right? You can take any of these guys down low. You can take a Cage Lee, $6,100. You can take a Jason Kokrak if you really wanted to. It's a little bit more expensive than we hoped to at $7,300, but he's going to be sub 3% owned today. So if you're in a large field GPP, if you're not trying to pivot from one of these top options up top, you got to make sure you're building this type of way. You got to make sure you're getting away from that chalk type of build, because even if you win first place, you're probably chopping with 5 to 6 people. The contest today for the 25K is a 5,000 person contest with over half of the prize pool going to first place. You don't want to be chopping if you take that down, especially in that type of contest that has that top end type of prize pool. You want to be taking those contests down by yourself. That's why in Showdown it's so important to be unique, especially for some of these large field GPPs, is because you're chopping so much the first place. A lot of people don't realize how much of an issue that is over time. Steven says, EVR putting an issue. Yeah, putting is an issue, right? It looks great after day one. Couldn't make anything yesterday, the day before. Actually, let me go ahead and get the numbers on it, because he's actually somebody I didn't do a deep dive into, because I figured his putter's been the problem. At least it was on Friday. So I'm bringing it up right here. Let's see what his shots game putting looked like yesterday. All right, so for the week, he has gained strokes putting. So I actually really wouldn't say that's the issue, Stefan. The issue as of right now is he's losing off of the tee, which at this golf course is really hard to do. He's also losing around the green, which he always loses around the green. He's an atrocious chipper of the golf ball. I'm worried about that off the tee. He's typically one of the longer players. He's very inaccurate, though. So he seems to be finding the out of bounds when no one else is this week. That's really the issue for him, Stefan. Not a priority for me today. And Barry says, call me crazy, but I think Kisner might not be a good cheapie in pivot today. So might not be or might be. So go ahead and clarify for me there. The wording there is a little bit off. I have a feeling you're saying that he might be a good pivot, because if we take a look at Kevin Kisner up here, right? So Kisner's at $6,200. He's towards the top of the board. He's probably going to be like 30% owned today. I don't expect him to be really low owned. I don't expect him to be overlooked by any means. In terms of course fit, he's not my favorite course fit, but the fact that he's made it to 16 under at this point is extremely impressive. He's clearly hitting his irons well. Pretty much any time we've seen him on the live coverage, it's him hitting piss missiles with his wedges to like 2-3 feet. He's scared the hole a few times this week as well. He's almost had a few hole outs. He said might be. No, all good. Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page there. Yeah, I agree. He might be a good pivot play up top, particularly off of a Matt Jones. They're looking at like half the ownership. So I think that makes a lot of sense there. And in terms of their games, I'd actually prefer Kevin Kisner over a Matt Jones. Matt Jones is hardly ever going to gain off the tee. He's extremely inaccurate. And to this point of the week, and I want to go ahead and check this, I'm pretty sure Matt Jones has gained 4 strokes around the green. This is something that I wanted to mention. I want to get you guys the exact number here. But he's doing very unsustainable things around the green. You can just tell if you guys watch the coverage, he's chipping in from like off every single green. So let's see. So he has gained 3.61 shots gained around the green to this point of the week, and he has lost over a stroke on approach. That screams regression. I mean, to be at the top of the leaderboard and losing strokes on approach, that is the opposite of sustainable. So Matt Jones, the more and more I talk about it, the more and more I think that we probably just need to be fading him here. The fact that he's made it into the top 5 at this point is probably his ceiling, because if he goes out and loses strokes on approach today, it's very unlikely he goes out there and shoots under par. He could shoot over par. It would not surprise me. If he figures out the irons, then by all means, he could have a good day, but to this point has not done so. Let's talk about a few other pivots. If you're looking towards the top of the board and you're going to try and find somebody low owned, I think Max Homa might be your guy. You see $6,500 here. He's starting one shot back of where Kevin Kisner will be today. And Max Homa, on Thursday looked horrible. He went out there. He was towards the bottom of the leaderboard, but put up a solid round Friday, that is, and also Saturday as well. So really could have things moving in the right direction. He was a core pick for me because of his iron play. His putting on Bermuda has definitely improved over the years. Going to be lower owned than a Kisner as well. So as of right now, the industry has him right around 22% owned, which is fair for a Max Homa. If he was right around 15 to 10% owned, if he was being overlooked by the field, might be one of my highest exposed plays of the day. But, getting his fair share of ownership right there, I'm still going to be a priority. Garrick Higgo has looked unbelievable. He had a really bad hole towards the end of his day, or else he would have been in the top 5. I believe had a double bogey on number 17. I believe he might have even bogeyed the last hole. I'm going to have to go ahead and double check on that. But at $6,900, he's got enough length to take this place apart. He's also a Bermuda grass specialist when it comes to the putting, also the chipping, which you like to see there at $6,900. You're starting to get into this range here when you're getting down to the 14 and 13 under range, where guys are going to be much lower owned. So you're talking probably 10 to 12% ownership on a Higgo. He could also be a very good ownership pivot. So let's go ahead and build a few lineups just to give you guys an idea of some of the builds I'm looking at. Let's assume that we're taking Higgo in this build. We're probably going to try and take another value option up top. You can see we're down to $6,600 remaining. Matt Jones is going to be a no-go for me today. Cam Davis makes a whole lot of sense. I love the course fit here. He's definitely going to be getting quite a bit of ownership. But in terms of course fit, momentum, form, has everything we're looking for. As of right now, and I'm going to double check the exact number here, Cam Davis is gaining in every category but on the greens, which is something that we see from him from time to time. You know, he's not always the best PGA Tour level putter, but he also has these spike performances where he goes out there and he'll gain 2 to 3 strokes putting per round. And that's when you see him put up some of these ceiling type performances. So yeah, to this point of the week, has lost 0.915 shots gained putting to the field, is right around neutral around the green, but gaining over 3 strokes tee to green. So you like to see that. The guy is clearly hitting the ball well, and definitely makes sense in this type of build. And now we have $6,500 remaining, right? So a lot of people are just like, oh, Matt Jones, he's in 4th place, blah, 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 blah. But you don't want to be chalk donkeys here. This is for a GPP type of build. You could go to Kevin Kisner. That would make a lot of sense. By leaving $300 on the table does increase our chances at being unique. But we could spend all of our salary and use a Max Homa and arguably have a higher chance of being unique. And that's what I said before. It's not always about how much salary you use or the ownership percentages of your individual players. It's the actual combination or the quote unquote roster construction that matters. So I like doing that whole lineup a lot there. Again, it's a good mix of some of the chalk and some of these lower owned pivots. If you didn't want to go to a Garrick Higgo, you wanted to take someone else down low, a couple other pivots that we were considering. I mean, you can go to a KH Lee if you really want to save some salary. We can go ahead and see what kind of build that would leave us with. So we go ahead and take a KH Lee, similar options to what we had before here. I could end up taking one of these guys in this middle tier range. But like we said before, Siwoo Kim, not the best course fit. Joel Damon, about as average of a play as you're going to get this week. And Garrick Higgo, I do like, but we don't necessarily need to spend down for a KH Lee there. So if we're going to go ahead and spend down the whole way, and I want to go ahead and outline this just one more time, look how important having a Lucas Glover is. By using a Lucas Glover, somebody who's way down towards the bottom of the board, really the difference between him and a KH Lee is minimal, if any. We're able to spend up and get Lucas. Where's Power? Right here, Seamus Power. Seamus Power, a much better player than a lot of the other guys in this range, starting higher up the leaderboard, but also better course fit and better recent form. So just go ahead, tinker around with some of these builds and you guys are building later on today. We're going to finish up here with a question from Barry and then a cash lineup. So Barry says, is Finau a nice low ownership play? So let's go ahead and check it out. He's definitely got a lot of volatility inherently to his game. We know the long bomber off the tee. When he gets hot with the putter, he really gets it going. As you can see, he is $8,000. So he's got a little bit of a price tag to him, but much like some of these other middle tier options that we were considering, much like a Xander Schofley or even somebody like a Sam Burns, it's going to make your roster completely unique. The studs and duds is what pretty much everybody goes with for these single round slates. So at $8,000, minus 11, I mean, I could see it, right? He's got the game to take this place apart. The issue is that he's been extremely inconsistent throughout this event. So if you think he has a good round, goes out there and turns it around, go out and deploy him. But I'm definitely, at least personally, concerned about the recent form that we've seen. He took quite a bit of time off. And this is unfortunate, but I do think it at least needs to be mentioned because it is why I'm fading him. His family was dealing with tragedy, right? I believe his wife, her dad passed away. My condolences, obviously, but to say that he was 100% focused on this week's tournament is probably just not true. So that's probably why he's a fade for me. I didn't know about that before the week either. I mean, it wasn't super widely publicized. They were talking about it on the television, said a little bit, but yeah, that's might be why we're seeing him struggle a little bit. But yeah, that's all I've got here for. Actually, no, let's go over the cash lineup. I promised you guys. My bad. Trying to get out of here a little early. Sorry about that. All right, let's talk about a cash lineup. So when you're playing cash, go ahead and lock in John Rahm and Cam Smith, right? I think that they're absolutely no-brainer plays here. You're really starting to think after this point because if you want to take a Berger or a Cantley, which would also make a lot of sense, we're also forced into that studs and duds type of approach, which I'll go ahead and show you what that would look like. If we want to go ahead and take a Patrick Cantley, a Matt Jones, right? We don't have to worry about the chalk when it comes to a cash game. In fact, we actually want to be embracing that chalk. Now we're left with $7,000 remaining per player, which puts us in a pretty good spot to at least take some guys that have some skill here. You could take a Mark Leishman. We can go down and take a Max Homa. This is really what I think most of your cash lineups should look like. Rather than have the dumpster dive, take some of these guys down low, like a Lewis Glover or a KH Lee. Go ahead and try and live towards the top of the board. I'm trying to take people that are coming in with good form. And ideally, this is what my cash lineup would look like for today. If you wanted to go ahead and mix it up a little bit, maybe you really don't like Matt Jones today because of that shots gained around the green and the fact that he's losing with his approach play. Could not blame you at all. Go down to Kevin Kisner, right? He's a little bit further down the board. But in terms of the recent form, and I'm going to go ahead and double check this on Kevin Kisner right now. He's doing it in a very sustainable way. You know, he's gaining strokes on putting. He always does that. So I don't think that's anything we should hold against him. And in terms of his wedge plays, he's been excellent. So I'm bringing it up right now. I'd be very surprised if he's not a significant gainer on approach this week. Yeah, he's gained over a stroke on approach this week. So really, anytime that Kevin Kisner is gaining on approach, he's gained over 2 strokes putting this week, 2.4 strokes putting. That's going to lead to a solid performance, right? He's lost nearly 3 strokes off the tee this week. So perhaps he needs to turn that around a little bit, but if he does, could put up a really low one. So that's what we've got here for today, guys. As always, really appreciate you guys stopping by. We're going to have even more golf content coming next week. It'll be for the Sony Open over at YLI. We'll have a course breakdown dropping tomorrow morning, DK picks as well, and of course, Showdown content for all of the slates over the weekend. But until then, guys, good luck with all of your lineups today. Make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and put them down in the chat as well.